Yes, aversive training methods can work, but at what cost? In this video, we're going to dive into the real reasons why, even when used correctly, these methods can do lasting damage to your dog's trust and well-being.
Absolutely. And, when we hear the word correctly, which we do from trainers, it always makes us cringe because we know in our hearts that there is no correct way to use pain and intimidation. And we're going to talk about a few, just because sometimes people just aren't aware. You trust the person that you hire. Oh, thanks, Sal.
Right.
And you go with them. But as we always say at the end, and we'll say now, if it doesn't feel right to you, it's not.
Yes.
Think about having two electrodes in your neck causing you pain when you weren't doing what somebody wanted. And in many cases, you don't even know what it is that they want.
Well, and oftentimes what happens is dogs learn to avoid the pain. So they will do things to avoid the pain of the aversive piece of equipment. And I don't really believe they're learning at that point. They're learning to avoid pain, but are they really learning the behavior? I don't think so. And I will tell you how you determine that. Take that collar off and see how the dog responds when you ask him to do something. Oftentimes there's a lot of confusion. And also, what are those electrodes, if you're using an electric collar, do to that brain, especially in developing puppies and older dogs as well? But, we started talking a little bit about electric collars, but there's other aversive tools that we need to think about. And these are on various levels, right? The three that prong collars, choke collars, and electric collars, I all consider those at the highest level of pain, right? The highest level of aversiveness. But you can even go down to things like putting pennies in a can and shaking them to interrupt a behavior.
Absolutely.
That's aversive as well.
I actually know of a dog who a trainer came out, a small dog, taught her mom to shake that can, and the poor little dog had a heart attack.
I've got one, the squirt bottle, when people squirt the dog to make them stop whatever. I had a golden retriever that I worked with, sweetest dog ever, and I got called out because he bit his mom. So as usual, I sit down, we have to determine why this happened, right? So I asked her, what was going on right before he bit you? And she said, I was just over here washing the windows. We're washing the windows. Okay, let's think about this. I said, what have you used in the past for any type of training tool? And she said, I've squirted him in the face with a water bottle, which I had seen sitting on the counter anyway. And the dog didn't build the association that him barking caused him to be upset by that water being squirted in his face. It was just the water being squirted in his face, and the squirt bottle built that association.
And that was such great down and dirty investigating on your part, Judy, right?
Kind of interesting.
All the puzzle pieces, we all have to put them together.
Absolutely, it's puzzle pieces. And so we had to placate all bottles in the home.
100%. I'm so glad that she called you. Also, gentle leaders. I hate that they're called gentle leaders. And so often people say, but this is okay, right? And I share that the person who first came up with the gentle leader had both horses and dogs. And she said, if we can control a big animal like a horse with this, wow, it's going to be fabulous for those of us who have big dogs. But really, their noses are so different. I like to say that a dog's nose is who they are.
Absolutely.
And, so there's so many nerve endings on dogs have scratched their corneas trying to get these off. And then if somebody says to me, but now my dog's used to it, there have been so many instances where veterinarians find out that jaws have been twisted. And I actually know of a dog who became paralyzed when that back.
Yeah, because they're tweaking the back of the neck.
Vertebrae. Yeah.
Yes, right at the base of the skull. And if a dog were to jump out after a squirrel or something, and regardless of whether the person pulls on that head halter or not, the dog inadvertently is doing it to themselves, there can be damage. and it's long-term damage that can, like you said, it could cause paralysis.
It's horrible. So
There's
upsetting.
also a nerve, or rather a tear duct, that goes from the
Mm.
eye all the way down the muzzle to the nose. And those can be negatively affected by something like a head halter. So you
So
want to be
many.
very careful with that type of thing and just not use it. Why even put it into play?
Right, right. And there's so many things going on the neck too.
Mhm.
When we bounce back to the prong collar or the chain, there's the trachea, there's the thyroid gland. Think about put a prong collar on yourself and jerk it and see how it feels. It's really awful.
Yeah, and we see so many dogs with thyroid disease, right? And that thyroid is up there. And then also let's talk about the optic nerve. And the optic nerve is also in that area. And we have a graphic we're going to put up of the inside of what's in the dog's head that can be affected by those collars. And that's any collar, even a flat collar can cause a problem in the dog's neck.
There are parts of Norway where it's illegal to walk a dog on anything but a harness, and as usual, we're kind of behind.
We're way
Mm.
behind on things like that. But let's talk about the trust and the well-being of the dog when aversive tools or methods are used. And when I say tools, that's the equipment. But when we say methods, methods can be anything from yelling at the dog, just harshness. Anything that is not positive and happy can be aversive to the dog.
Right, absolutely. It's so important to build that bond of trust and love and safety. And nobody can move forward and learn, as we've said before many times, unless they do feel safe and they do feel that bond. So when you hurt somebody, whether it's a dog or a family member or a bully down the street is hurting another kid, you do lose that trust in that person and you don't feel safe around them.
And sometimes you can't build that trust back. Sometimes that
Right.
trust is never ever going back to what the original level was, no matter what you do or how hard you work at it. And I've seen a lot of trainers out there say, jerk the lead and give them a treat.
Hate
Well,
it.
that's so confusing. And
It's
it doesn't do anything, but it makes the dog trust you less because,
it definitely damages your relationship. How could it be otherwise?
right. And so we're talking about relationship and we're talking about welfare. So relationships are damaged and also the welfare, the health and the well-being of the dog is being damaged by using these tools. There is never a reason to use any of those tools or any of those methods. I've worked with dogs. I've worked with a lot of various species of animals for close to 30 years. I have never used any aversive tools. I always keep interactions positive, and I've never had a dog, regardless of aggression or whatever the case may be, that I haven't been able to be very successful with. So
Exactly.
tools like that are never needed.
Right. And I work with dogs who have bite histories, who have been reactive, dogs who have unfortunately experienced those tools. And it usually adds to the dog being much more pessimistic about their world. And when I talk to my veterinarian friends, they tell me many dogs end up being euthanized after such tools are used because some dogs shut down, which we see in their body language, and other dogs say, wow, I have to get you before you get me.
Right.
And the dog pays the price.
No end, neither one of those have a good ending. So
Right.
my advice is, as Debbie always says, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. But listen to your gut and don't use fear. Don't use punishment because fear is another thing. You can scare a dog into doing something. Don't use fear. Don't use punishment. And if you bring a trainer in who wants to use these methods, there are tons of trainers out there that are good, positive reinforcement, fear-free trainers that they're easy to find.
Or call us. We'll let you know. So remember, if it doesn't feel right to you, it's not.